Hey, welcome back to Web3 with Whitney. This is day 15 of my daily Web3 exploration live across YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, and TikTok. 6 different platforms I go live every day. As much as I sometimes wonder if it's annoying the heck out of people, but you know what? I am very committed to learning about Web3. I think that everybody needs to at least raise their awareness about it, whether or not it excites them, it interests them. Knowing about Web3 is of major benefit because that's where things are headed. And there's so much ignorance, there's fear, there's uncertainty, there's doubt, FUD, as we talked about in a previous episode about crypto lingo. If you haven't yet, you can go and check out the audio only version of the show, the previous recordings. Every day I'm striving to make these videos more valuable and even more concise. I also encourage you to bear with me through any tech issues that I'm still trying to sort out. The major one right now is just the bandwidth of my internet. And every day I mean to call my internet company and ask them what's going on. I haven't gotten around to that yet. So usually the live streams will stall out about 20 to 30 minutes in. So I'm actually trying to keep them shorter than that so I can beat the ending to the beat the platform to the ending. I don't know, whatever you would call it. So thanks again. If you've had any issues, I appreciate your patience as I work through all of that. I actually advise for a live streaming platform called eStreamly, and doing these daily videos has been really helpful for me to just be in the weeds. I think that's the right term of the live streaming world that I haven't really been in. I've dabbled in live streaming off and on throughout all the years of being a content creator, but this is the first time in a while, especially that I've been super consistent with it on video. I have done a lot of audio lives through Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces, but anyways, so little updates for you to begin with, and then I'm going to get into the main topic today, which is about the technology adoption curve and what it takes for things to go mainstream. And again, I feel like we're still at the very early stages of Web3, but that kind of remains to be seen. I think it really depends on opinion and what elements of Web3 you're mentioning. And I'm very curious what it takes for things to go mainstream and what happens after something goes mainstream. So we're going to dive into that. First, I like to begin the broadcast just reminding you that you can go to whitneylauritsen.com/web3 if you haven't yet, because there's a number of things on there. Number one is there's a button that says Get Free Well, and that references my Wellcoin over on the platform called Rally. There's tons of perks involved. I've mentioned them in multiple episodes. And I plan to sprinkle in surprise airdrops, which I did a few days ago for the first time. That's where this link goes to. And it leads you to a page that says all the airdrops are currently claimed. And one thing I'm thinking is to reward people who show up live and engage, to ask questions. So actually, I'm going to announce 2 different ways that you can get some free Wellcoin, which is free cryptocurrency that you can use within the Rally infrastructure that you could turn into US dollars if you would like, whatever you want to do with it. That's completely fine. So there's 2 ways I would like to reward you. One, if you show up live and ask a real question, if you ask something that's, sometimes people like to show up on lives and ask completely random questions. I think it's to amuse them. Those do not count. But if you ask a serious question about Web3 during any of my lives, which usually happen around this time of day, it's about 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern. If you come and ask any of those questions that are on your mind or suggest a topic, I will send you some free well. You can also, if you're not able to show up live, if you go to whitneylauritsen.com/web3, there's the question and topic request section. If you just send me a question or a topic request, I will reward you with some well. Now, that does involve one extra step, which is to message me afterwards. I wanted to keep the question and topic request section anonymous for the most part. I may switch this up in the future. But if you ask me a question, I'm going to use the honor system. Just send me a message on whatever platform you're choosing, or you can email me and just say, hey, I asked a question. I was there live. How do I get my free well? And I will find a way to kind of verify that or take your word for it and send you over some. So if all of the links are to contact me are at whitneylauritsen.com to make it really easy, or you can just use whatever platform you're viewing this on and reach out to me. Now, sometimes those things go to spam, so if it takes some time to get my attention, just be a little patient. So, love to send you some free well because I really want to reward participation and engagement and encourage you to get involved and just think about things that you want to know, whether it's something over on TikTok, anytime, any question you have. And if you ask a question, I will send you over some free Wellcoin. But no spam. Spam does not count as engaging. No Wellcoin for the spammers. All right, so today's topic is going to be about the tech curve, the adoption curve, but there's a few things I wanted to get to before that. First of all, happy February. It's the first day of February, and it's kind of, I'm always amazed when it's the first day of a month. Like it feels like time just goes by so fast. I also wanted to share an update that I saw, a couple things on Twitter that I think are valuable. So I've referenced Rally, which is the platform where I have the Wellcoin. If any of you are curious, the link in my profile and the links in the description of each video will bring you over to the Rallycoin. And they have a really good Twitter account that has kept me in the know about Web3 on a number of levels. And one thing that they did today on their Twitter was to announce that Rally is now supported on Gemini. And that led me to want to learn more about what Gemini is. So I'm going to get that to them in a moment. But Rally described Gemini as the next generation cryptocurrency exchange and custodian for buying, selling, storing, and earning digital assets. So they linked over to the Gemini Twitter account, which also has a ton of great info. If you're trying to learn about Web3, I cannot encourage you enough to spend some time on Twitter every day. I have a Twitter list where you can follow all the Web3 people that I'm following. You can see what's going on. Actually, the cool thing about Twitter lists is that you don't have to follow anybody. With a Twitter list, you can just like click on the list and see what people are posting without following. I learned that it was not that obvious to me, so worth mentioning here. Now, what's interesting and was also not so obvious to me is Gemini links to from their Twitter a Telegram account, and I'm going to be completely honest, I've never used Telegram. I know the name, but I didn't really know what Telegram was. So this led me down a rabbit hole of trying to better understand what that means. So I went over to Gemini's Telegram, and it's basically kind of like a forum, I guess. And then I went to Telegram's FAQ section to find out what exactly it is. And it's a messaging app where it is very focused on speed and security. It's super fast, simple, and free. You can use Telegram on all these different devices. Your messages sync up across those devices, and they have 500 million monthly active users. And it's, I guess, one of the top 10 most downloaded apps in the world, which is so interesting when you see something like this that you've never used yourself. It's just fascinating. There's so much going on that it's almost impossible to keep up to date with everything. So I went over to Gemini's, and a quick explanation for them beyond what they say on their Twitter is that you can find product announcements on there, event invites, educational content, all on this Telegram account. So if you want to check that out, it's linked in the description of the recording of this live stream. The other thing I wanted to mention today is a Twitter thread that I found quite interesting. This is also linked. This is from the account David Spinks, I think is how you pronounce it. And he started a little debate on Twitter about whether or not community and capitalism are at odds. And since I've been talking about community in almost every single episode of the show, I found that really interesting. And there's so much in this Twitter debate that I'm not even going to spend the time to talk about today because I haven't fully taken it all in yet. But it's really worth reading. So I encourage you to go over to David's Twitter account. Again, that's linked in the description of this, or you can just go to @David Spinks, Spinks, and look that up. That was posted at 10 a.m. Pacific time on February 1st. And people got really into it. And I think this is really interesting because I'm very passionate about community. I'm skeptical and learning more and more about capitalism and some of the issues that exist there. But I think that, capitalism to me is a complex thing, just like community is complex. And sometimes our definitions of those two words are different from what other people view them as. So conversations like this really get me thinking. And that's my big aim here. All right, so the main topic for today, I guess we'll see how long my tech issues go for. I'm surprised they started so early today. So hopefully we are done with the tech challenges and can just move seamlessly through the rest of this. So I found this article on medium.com, which is another one of my favorite resources. There's so much great information. I was looking up the technology adoption curve in terms of what that means for Web3. Before I get into the Web3 elements of this, I just want to define the technology adoption cycle. And I find this just so fascinating. It comes up in a ton of different contexts, and it's helped me better understand how I relate to technology, how other people relate to technology, how we can have better conversations around all of this. And I'm curious, here's a question for you to engage with if you want to get some free Wellcoin. Let me know where you fall on the technology adoption cycle. So let me pull up the screen again for those that are watching the recording that has it. So typically it's broken up into 5 different elements of this curve. And it's literally like almost like a mountain if you've never looked at it before, or you can just go find the whatchamacallit, the image for it. If you just type in technology adoption curve, it shows this. And typically it falls into 2 categories called early market and mainstream market. And right now, I believe that we're somewhere in the early market stages with Web3. And so that comprises of innovators and early adopters. I usually fall into the early adopter category. I'm curious if you do too. So if you do, leave me a comment or send me a message. Where do you fall? The early adopters are sometimes called visionaries, which to me feels like a little in the ego, but let's go with it. It feels good to be called a visionary sometimes, right? And the innovators tend to be people that are like really good at taking risks. They're jumping into things even if they don't have a ton of info. They don't need other people to prove something to them before they decide to do something. Early adopters usually wait to see what happens with the innovators. They need to collect a little bit more information before they move forward. Then there's something called the chasm, and I actually don't have a definition of that right in front of me, but generally there's like a gap between this early market, the innovators and the early adopters, and the mainstream market. And the mainstream market is composed of early majority, late majority, and laggards. Early majority are also sometimes referred to as pragmatists. Late majority are referred to as conservatives, and laggards are referred to as skeptics. So I'm very curious, where do you fall? Are you an innovator, early adopter, early majority, late majority, or laggard? And we'll get into some more details in terms of what that means for Web3 in a minute. I'm very fascinated by this because it explains so much of what's going on with Web3 and the way that people talk about it. So with that said, I want to bring up this article I found on medium.com. And you can follow along if you're watching the live stream on any platform aside from TikTok. TikTok is the one place where I can't share my screen and share any links with you, but you can always go to the recording on YouTube, for instance, and it has all these links in it. So this was written by Steve Galetsky in January of this year, so just a couple weeks ago. And he has some really great points in here, and I want to break down each of them. Number 1, decentralized finance, also known as DeFi, had a market cap that hit $90 billion US in 2021. And this is equivalent to 2.6% of the S&P 500's financial services sector. A few days ago, or was it yesterday? I can't even keep track of what I talk about and when. Yesterday, yeah. On day 14 of my live streams, I talked about cryptocurrency versus the stock market. So if you want some more information on how they compare and differ, I would check that out. But it's really interesting to hear like how much money there already is in this space. Also, as you may have heard, that the NFT world, especially on OpenSea, just alone on that platform, hit 14 billion US dollars in 2021. I forget, there was also some other crazy stat about OpenSea that people were freaking out about. I mean, it is like a fascinating world. And I actually don't have an OpenSea account. Like, I only hear about it secondhand from other people. I buy all my NFTs right now on the Rally platform because I feel more comfortable there. But it's just amazing how much money is changing hands. And in 2021, that was a 64% or 64 times increase on the previous year, 2020. Despite all of this, though, as is pointed out in this Medium article I'm referencing, the broader Web3 space still faces a number of challenges in order to get across that chasm in the adoption curve that I mentioned, and to really convince people, especially those skeptics, that this is something of value to them. And that's part of my aim with doing these live streams, is demystifying it and helping people get over their fear, their uncertainty, and their doubt. So, this article I'm referencing gets into the chasm, actually, which is something I want to know. So, apparently, this stemmed from someone named Everett Rogers, who put forward the concept of the diffusion of innovations curve in 2009. And there's a book called Crossing the Chasm that kind of outlines what all this means. So we might think of innovators in the Web3 space as developers and crypto maximalists who have been engaged in the space for the better part of at least 5 years. And I think that that's what most people think of when they're looking at the Web3 space. I hear the term a lot, crypto bros. And this is part of the reason I'm so dedicated to doing these live videos, is because I'm not a crypto bro. Like, I'm a woman first and foremost. I guess, can women be bros? I'm not sure. But I know I don't fall into the stereotype of all of this. And I think that there's so much misconception when it comes to who's in the Web3 space. And maybe you don't fall into this either. Now, NFTs have played a major role in Web3 and the popularity and growth of it. Of course, like looking at the finances of it is a perfect example. And I think that's helping a lot more early adopters get into this world, especially tech savvy people. So they might be using this to have more income streams and create better relationships with their audience. And these are some of the main points that I bring up every single episode, right? NFTs also kind of took it like crypto from just being something like a speculative asset, as is referenced in this article, to something that actually has utility. And I think this is part of the shift that we're seeing here in Web3, of not just seeing something as a financial benefit, but something that actually has value to you and purpose. It's not something that, like, digital thing that you just have and hope that is going to do well. But NFTs are actually giving you something in exchange for holding on to something, which I think is the big focus right now. We're going to see a lot of that in 2022 as things progress. The article said, while innovators and early adopters typically chase the shiny new things and seek out change agents, everyone else, which includes the early majority and the laggards, they're more concerned with convenience and complete solutions to painful problems. Laggards won't even try out the new solutions until they're brought along kicking and screaming by necessity. I also think that this is very likely to happen in this Web3 space. A lot of my friends already seem like they're kicking and screaming. This is one of the reasons that I broadcast my live streams to my personal Facebook account where a lot of my friends hang out. Just to be like, hey guys, like, Web3 is really not that scary and there's a lot of cool elements of it, but we got to kind of work through and better understand what that means. Does that make sense? So let's go into the scalability side of Web3. And again, I'm referencing this article on Medium. This is not from my brain specifically, or exclusively, I should say. Now, this gets into like how the English language works, and maybe this will help better understand like why people are how people think about technology shifts and all of that. So it gets into some of the histories of the English language and how it was used far and wide in Britain. And because of its use in powerful countries and trading destinations, there was great utility in learning the English language. That I think is a phenomenal point. So many times when I talk about Web3, I say, like, this is a language to learn. And as anyone knows who has studied a new language, you have to be consistent. You have to practice it. My abilities with Web3 have greatly changed in just 2 weeks because I do these live streams every day and I'm talking about Web3 every day. I hope that you do the same thing. That's why I want you to write me comments. I can read your words out loud. But maybe beyond these live streams, you can go into your own conversations or maybe do your own live streams, your own podcasts, your own TikTok posts, and talk about Web3 daily. So you're practicing that language and really paying attention to how other people. And in addition to this being like a great utility in learning English, English is also, compared to a lot of other languages, relatively easy to learn. And if something is difficult to learn or use, we tend to shy away from it. And this article points out things like user interface. For any of you that are in the tech world, you understand how important it is for something to be simple. No matter what platform you're watching this video or you're listening to, you've probably felt pulled to that platform because the user interface complements your levels, your awareness on some level or another, right? That's why you picked it versus maybe the other platforms. Like I hear this all the time with TikTok. For those that are watching the TikTok live, you probably too. Like people have all these misconceptions about what TikTok is. If somebody has never used TikTok, the most common thing they say is, oh, isn't that just a dancing app? We've all heard it. It's so cliche now. But for those that spend a lot of time either consuming content on TikTok or creating content on TikTok, you know it's not just about dancing. There's so much going on. I mean, I'm a perfect example. I talk about Web3, I talk about food, I talk about, mental health stuff. I never dance. I don't think I've ever danced in any of my TikTok videos. So most people I watch on TikTok don't dance either. And that's another great example of how there's so many misconceptions about Web3 because that's all people know and they haven't learned it yet. And maybe the way people are talking about Web3 thus far is not literally speaking someone's language. And that relates to user interface design. We have to keep trying new ways to communicate. There's a great adage in the UI world that says, don't make me think. The easier and more intuitive a product is, the more likely we are to engage with it, derive value from it, continue to use it, and most importantly, tell our friends or colleagues about it. And we all see this happening if you really pay attention to any app that is certainty is something human beings are evolutionarily predisposed to avoid, because that could mean death. And it sounds so obvious when you read it, but when you really stop to think about how you feel when something feels uncertain, I think that's always such a great clue. And wouldn't it be interesting to just do a deeper thought dive into people being afraid of Web3, maybe based on what I'm hearing, and tell me if you've heard other things that are different from this. I think a lot of people are afraid that Web3 means the death of humanity, that it's going to disconnect us, that Web3 is pulling us farther apart. It's taking us away from the present moment. It's putting us too focused on our devices. There's so much fear, especially when it comes to the metaverse. There's fear around money. People don't want to buy things that they don't understand. So maybe that helps for those of us that are on the innovator and early adopter side of this curve better understand why somebody's resistant to it. They just might be really afraid. This article references Discord servers in terms of all these people asking basic questions. Ooh, these can be helpful. I'm always looking for new topics to dive into with my live stream, so maybe I'll use this as an example. And this just goes deeper and deeper. So I'm trying to find some I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and see the conclusion that this article has about this curve. So the final thoughts, according to this author on medium.com, is that immense progress has been made, especially in the past 1 or 2 years. But there's a lot of challenges that have to be overcome for people to feel more comfortable in here. So it's going to remain for a while dominated by innovators and early adopters. And if you're an early adopter or an innovator, that might seem like great news. I've mentioned before how it feels really good to be the first or part of the first group, the first wave. That's how I knew that I was an early adopter, because I really like doing something that's new that not a lot of people are doing. I'm very turned off when it gets to that higher curve of the late adopters, the mainstream. Like when something goes mainstream, I tend to lose interest. Part of that, I think, is just, there's that ego boost to being one of few people. It's also less crowded. It's less overwhelming. There's just so many advantages that I've found. So I tend to move on to the next thing. I think this is why I'm very drawn to Web3, is it is just these innovators and early adopters right now. So it feels like we're all part of a special group. I've learned this about myself too. Like I'm drawn to brands like Tesla and Apple that are very tech heavy, that are really trying to be ahead of the curve. And they're also taking some time stream. Even Apple, so many people have Apple products now. I forget what the percentages are, but still, I would imagine that majority of people do not. This was true back in the day. So I used to work at the Apple store, and back when I was there, the percentage of people that had Mac computers was so small, and so it really felt like you were part of this special group. And I found the same thing. I have a Tesla, and it was like a huge deal for me to get that car. It was very expensive. I saved up all this money. But I felt very drawn and committed to it because I wanted to be part of that electric car world. I wanted to be an early adopter in that space. And it's been such an amazing experience because every time I go to charge my car, I have conversations with other Tesla owners who are just so excited, and we're connected instantly because we're in this small group of kind of early adopters. I feel like Tesla's further along the way, especially because their cars have gone down in price, so people like me have been able to buy them. But it's just reinforced this idea that you're part of something new or special or exclusive. And I think a lot of people are drawn to Web3 because of exclusivity. So I'm very curious to see how this will shift once it gets in the mainstream, because if it's not exclusive anymore, will people like me still be interested in it? Or is it just going to be whatever? And back to this article to see if there are any other final points. If crypto and decentralization advocates are serious about a new world order that revisits how power and wealth are distributed in our economy, then resolving the challenges laid out in this article are important. So to go back to part of that article, the author says that decentralized and Web3 applications tend to be very burdensome. There's still a lot of risks in terms of security. There's a steep learning curve. There's poor usability. There's a limited amount of people that are in the world right now, especially people that you might know personally. There's a lack of regulation, insurance offerings, applications that aren't necessarily better than what's been happening in Web 2. So people might feel like, well, what's the point? Why do I need to do this? And this is kind of funny. Solutions nobody asked for to problems that don't exist. And perhaps most of all, high gas process and slow transaction completion times. And the author says until these challenges are addressed, it's going to be challenging for this to be mainstream. So it's fascinating. I guess my big goal right now is to help reduce the learning curve. I show up every day to help myself learn this, but also to share what I learned for you too. So maybe taking this article into consideration will help you advocate for it more, will help you learn more, will help you talk about it with other people and kind of say, we're all in this together, but maybe you can address these problems too. I think this is where I want to end this stream today, which is that there are so many amazing opportunities in Web3 because we're still in this early stage of the curve, because we're still in the early market stage of it. If you get into Web3 now, you are a valuable resource because we haven't hit this momentum in the mainstream yet. So you could carve out a space for yourself here before others do. You can help educate people. You can help develop tools. I mean, if we go back to that list, thinking about all these challenges, how can you help the world of Web3 overcome them? So, again, how can you make it more secure? Can you get involved in understanding security? And maybe you can develop something that helps make Web3 more secure. The steep learning curve, you can do what I'm doing, which is helping educate others. Usability, if you're good at developing user interfaces, maybe you can develop something that makes elements of Web3 more accessible for people. Very easy thing to do if you feel like a limited number of close friends and colleagues are engaged in Web3. Can you do more to get them engaged? Again, like I am, I post to all these different platforms every day as a way to tell my friends, my colleagues, my acquaintances in across all these different social media platforms, like, hey, I'm here, you can come join me, we're all in this together. I think that's really helpful right now. And again, like the regulation, insurance, I mean, there's a lot of things that might be hard for us to do as individuals, but that doesn't mean that you can't get involved in bigger elements of this. And just re-examining it, I think if you do that personally for you, there are major benefits, and you'll be adding a lot of value to others. So if you are working on anything in the Web3 world, I'd love to hear from you. If you want to hear me talk about other things, maybe you can even come on and join my live stream. I may start bringing on special guests. I've been until I finish working out all the tech issues that I've had and the bugs on my internet issues or whatever's causing the live streams to crash sometimes. I hesitate to bring on any other variable, but please reach out to me. Let me know what either you want to hear, what you want to contribute, what you know. I truly want to hear from you. And as I mentioned, I will reward you by sending you some Rally. My coin is called the Wellcoin on rally.io. I have plenty of it. I want to give some away. I'd be happy to send some to you. So send me a message. We'll make it happen. And I'll be back again tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening. I hope to hear from you, and I'm wishing you all the very best with your own journey through Web3 between now and then. Bye.